Hello, true believers. This is Doc Hogg, and welcome to episode 41 of Comics and Variety. If you like this channel, please do subscribe, hit the notification bell to be notified when I post new videos, and for the sake of YouTube's search algorithm, please do hit the like button. Alrighty, before I move on to reviewing Black Widow #1, I want to mention a couple of comic books that I've backed recently. The first one is Extractors. This one is about space mercenaries who try to rescue civilians from space zombies. It has about 48 hours left to go, and it is only about 37% of the way to its goal. I really enjoyed reading the script that Aaron Calamari, the writer, sent me. And I have backed this one, and I think you should too, and let's really push it and get it to its goal. The second one is Tales from Nerosville, and this is one of the funniest set of comics that I have seen in a long time. At this point, it is only 25% of the way to its goal, but it has about a month left, so there's still plenty of time. The best thing about this is that for only $11, you get not one, not two, but 3 comics. And I'm not talking the digital versions, I'm talking the Dead Tree versions. So let's get this to its goal. The final one, and this is a new one, is Doorkickers, Panzer Demon. This is military combined with epic fantasy. I've been reading the script that Scott McCullough sent me. It's very, very good, a lot of action. I'm going to talk more about this one after I review Black Widow, but suffice to say for now, it is 85% of the way to its goal. It's got just over a week left, so let's get it the rest of the way. And of course, I will provide links to the Indiegogo campaigns for these 3 comics in the description below. Alrighty, moving on to Black Widow #1. The story here begins with Captain America and Black Widow trying to stop a terrorist plot on New Year's Eve. Part of the plot involves this robot. Black Widow disables it, and she does so with plot holes. For example, why doesn't the robot reach up with one of its tentacles and knock her off? And how does she open the robot to pull out the wires? Presumably the panels on a terrorist robot don't just pop open. But we don't know because apparently it's not important. Okay, moving on. Black Widow has been trained to kill, and as such she has an urge to kill, which she would do here against the terrorists had Captain America not intervened. But that urge doesn't leave her, so to satisfy it, she travels to a lawless place called Madripoor, looking for villains. Now, this is potentially interesting. Is it okay for Black Widow to satisfy that urge if she is killing evil people? You could have a story where Black Widow wants to kill villains, but it is not clear that those villains deserve to die. Give it some moral ambiguity. But nah, the writers Jen and Sylvia Suska mess it up by making the villains so evil that almost no one would doubt that killing them is the right thing to do. These villains are people who torture and murder little children for money. Think about it. Would any country that has the death penalty not use it on such people? Of course they would. So Black Widow satisfying her urge to kill doesn't really create any dilemma in this story. Now, it is usually, not always, but usually a good idea to include at least a little bit of humanity in your villains. It makes them a little more interesting. Take, for example, the comic book Infinity Gauntlet. The villain Thanos, as evil as he is, he wants to eliminate half of life, though he is motivated by a love for Lady Death, and I think most people can relate to that sort of longing. Now, introducing a little bit of humanity into the villains of this Black Widow comic could certainly make it a little more interesting. For example, imagine that the villains were engaged in some sort of very serious crime, but not one that it's clear deserves the death penalty. Or let's suppose they were engaging in some kind of murder, but they were motivated not by money, but by revenge. You would introduce some kind of moral ambiguity, and then, it would really be a serious question as to whether or not Black Widow should kill them. Is it morally right for her to kill them? That could give this comic a lot more depth, make it a lot more interesting, give a lot more material for the writer to explore. But no, the writers give us villains that are so heinous that we almost want to cheerlead their deaths. And it really, makes this comic book much, much less interesting. Now, the next thing I want to discuss here is body type. It seems that the social justice warriors at Marvel are trying to give Black Widow the most approved body type they can get away with before fans cry foul. Black Widow has traditionally been, a pretty curvy character in her body. I mean, certainly we see that in the movies with Scarlett Johansson. But here they're trying to give her in this comic, they're trying to give her the approved body type. First off, what is approved body type? Basically, it means not sexy. No big breasts or curvy hips in women, no big pecs or biceps in men, and so forth. And this is different from how Black Widow was drawn in the past. Here's how Jim Lee drew her. Even though, Jim Lee was known for drawing her in a more athletic body type, still, there are some curves here. Now, way back when, here is how George Perez drew her. There are curves. She is tall, and, she is definitely not flat-chested. And also, here is a page by George Perez that could very well be a scandal if it were put in a comic book today. Oh, yeah. But note that she has never been flat-chested until recently. Recently, there are some Black Widow books by Mark Waid where she looks like this, and then there is this comic book where they're trying to make her more flat-chested, less curves. They can't go too far because especially because of the movies, fans expect Black Widow to look a certain way. And they can't push it too far, but they're trying to move in that direction. Now, talking about body type here, let me first say what I'm not saying, and that is that there is no one sort of standard that everyone has to live up to, or they're not sexy. Obviously, there is no one type of body that everyone finds attractive. Everyone is different. Everyone has different standards. There are all different types of bodies that people are attracted to. That said, there are certain body types that are more likely to be seen as sexy by large groups of people. Right? That's why Hollywood tends to put people who have certain body types in movies versus other types. It's more likely to appeal to a broader audience, and hence, you get more ticket sales. This is a lesson that the comic book industry clearly needs to relearn. The body type that men want to see is the women who have big breasts, curvy hips, long legs, and so forth. For women, Hollywood is more likely to put this guy in a movie than this guy. And you might think of sexiness as being on a continuum. This guy is at one extreme and this guy is at the other. And where is Doc Hogg on this continuum? Yeah, that's right. Okay, let's move on to other body types. Alrighty, this here is sexy. This is maybe more toward the middle. This is sexy. This not so much. This is sexy. This. Ah! Now maybe you want to just dismiss me, Doc Hogg. Okay, whatever. But in doing so, you're missing the bigger point, which is this is fantasy. And in fantasy, we want to see things that are attractive. And with regard to bodies, that means, sexy body types. This is why Hollywood keeps putting people that look like Scarlett Johansson in movies. Okay, it's going to sell tickets. And if you don't reflect that in comic books, well, you're going to get the sales that you get here with Black Widow. These numbers here are from Comicron. This Black Widow was a 5-issue series. As you can see here, orders reached almost 34,000 for the first issue of Black Widow. But then in February, it dropped by almost 50% to 17,500. However, these are not actual sales. These numbers do not represent customers actually paying for comic books. What Comicron tracks is the number of orders that comic book stores put in for a particular comic book. So if comic book stores order almost 34,000 in January, and then the next month it falls to under 18,000, that means that an awful lot of the first issue of the Black Widow comic book simply did not sell. And you look at the continually declining numbers until May, it means that they were still having trouble selling them. And then you get this slight uptick in May. My guess is, the Avengers movie Endgame was coming out, and so retailers figured that, well, maybe there will be a slight increase in interest in the Black Widow comic book for May. But these are not particularly good numbers when you consider that the Black Widow character has been in 7 movies in the MCU, starting back with Iron Man #2. And when you consider that the 7th one, Avengers Endgame, was coming out in 2019. So there should have been a great deal of interest for this comic book. Certainly sales numbers much, much better than these. And why did they see such bad numbers for such a key character in the MCU? Well, one, the story is not particularly compelling, and two, they reduce Black Widow to a body type that is not particularly sexy, i.e., reducing the enjoyment we get out of the fantasy that is comic books, and ultimately these numbers are what you get from that. Okay, moving on to Doorkickers, Panzer Demon, and why I backed it. The plot of this can be summarized as a special ops team fights to stop an immensely powerful demon and his followers. It's always a good start when the plot is easy to summarize. And if you don't know, Panzer is the German word for tank, so this demon that this special ops team is after, he probably means business. Now, Scott McCullough jumps us right into the action on page 1. The Special Ops team is looking for a cult that is trying to bring a demon to Earth. I love this kind of artwork. A lot of nice detail. And what I really like is that this will open up to a double splash page on pages 2 and 3 that, according to the script I saw, will scream violence of action. Now, I didn't get to see the splash page, but if it's like page 1, it's going to be good. Here is another action page. Again, I love the art. I'll also say that the writer has a good ear for dialogue, especially among soldiers. The script I saw left off just as the Special Ops team was getting ready to track the Panzer Demon, so I can't tell you anything about that part of the comic. But what I did read up to that point makes me very eager to see how it turns out. So I've backed Doorkickers, and I think you should as well. Okay, that music means that it is time for Hogg's Headlines, all the news that Doc Hogg wants to report on. Dateline, keep this woman away from sharp objects. Jamie Biseglia was participating in a salmon fishing derby in Tacoma Narrows on Saturday when she realized she probably wasn't going to win that event. However, she saw another opportunity for glory. Yeah, that's what I'd call it, glory. When she spied an octopus one of her friends had caught. Quote, I grabbed it off the hook and said, take a picture for the photo contest, Miss Biseglia said. She put the octopus on her face and said the tentacles covered her ears and nose. It was a perfect, fun photo, except when the octopus bit down on her chin. Although Biseglia eventually freed herself from the octopus, she bled profusely for 30 minutes afterwards. Biseglia waited 2 days until the fishing derby was over to seek medical attention. That may not have been the best move, as the left side of her face was paralyzed and there was lots of swelling. Now she is on antibiotics and a quest of sorts. Quote, I want people not to do what I did. My advice is, know what you're touching beforehand, end quote, said Biseglia. I gotta wonder, when Miss Biseglia picked up the octopus, did she think it was a puppy dog? Alrighty, that's all for now. Until next time, have a very nice day. Hey, you son of